everybody, and welcome back to the Gaming Mix podcast, your official podcast from analogstickgaming.com. Hopefully you know us, but if you don't, my name is Jordan, one of the co-owners of Analog Stick Gaming, and if you've been watching for a while, you'll know that to my left, as always, is the founder of Analog Stick Gaming, Jeff. How are you, Jeff?
Kind of tired. It's not too bad. Just kind of up early, prepping everything, and then playing a whole lot of First Descent.
You were up very early, which is which is unusual. Like on recording day, I normally hear from you maybe like an hour before we record at the earliest, and I think it was even earlier than that today. So
Oh yeah.
yeah. But I think we've got a decent episode. Obviously, we got news and things to talk about. And if you've seen the title of the video, you will know that later on we're going to talk about some of the best and worst and kind of middling live service games. Because there are many of them, and there seems to be more coming out all of the time. And Jeff has played a few things that will link to that topic, so we'll get to that a bit later. But it does mean that what we've been playing will actually be in the middle of the episode this time, and then the topic will be at the end. So, look out for that, and hopefully you enjoy it. But before that, as always, we do have some news to go through, so why don't we get straight to that, Jeff?
Sure. All right. So our news today comes to us from VGC. So Sony is apparently not moving forward on the Horizon Zero Dawn Netflix series. The project, which was being developed by the Umbrella Academy showrunner Steve Blackman, has reportedly stalled, according to Rolling Stone. This report was part of a wider article that accused the showrunner of toxic bullying, manipulative, and retaliatory behavior. It is unclear if the series will move forward with a different creative partner or if the project has been entirely scrapped. Horizon Zero Dawn is an exceptionally well-crafted game with wonderful characters not often seen in the rank and file of the gaming world, Blackman said at the time of the show's announcement. Guerrilla Games has created an incredibly lush and vivid world of man and machine who find themselves on a collision course to oblivion. Their salvation comes in the form of a young female warrior named Aloy, who has no idea she's the key to saving the world. Suffice to say, yes, Aloy will be a main character in our story. My writing partner on this, Michelle Labretta, and I are thrilled to be able to expand this remarkable IP into a series for all types of viewers. So yeah, like basically Blackman has been accused of essentially being, one of those Hollywood types that essentially has been very toxic to the creative process, to the people essentially around him. This is, something that is even transferred into gaming as well too, with a few creative types that have had to either leave a studio because of controversy or whatever the case is. But
Yes.
this series was always going to be an uphill battle, I think, because it was going to be a game that, sorry, a show that was set in the future with Aloy and then set in the past as well. So you get to see both parallels so that Aloy's just not sitting around and hearing exposition, and that's how the viewer finds it. So they were trying to do something a little bit different. But Horizon Zero Dawn is also another interesting franchise because it's not as, I think, popular as Sony wants it to, is leading us to believe, because like they talk about how like Forgotten West or whatever, like the sequel sold well, and it did, but it was also attached to PS5s. That was the only way that you could buy PS5s for a while.
Yeah.
So it
So
has
that.
that
Mhm.
you know
And
that
that's the thing. I'd like to see. It would be interesting to see how many people actually played that game for a significant amount of time, because
yeah,
I like the Horizon games, don't get me wrong. I think they are good
I enjoy them too.
to they're good to maybe even great games depending on what style of game you like. But they are not. I know you're not a huge Last of Us fan, Jeff, but in terms of being able to translate to other forms of entertainment media, they are not The Last of Us. They are not God of War. They are not.
See,
They're not Halo. Do you know what I mean?
no, but I mean, at the same time, like a show about basically fighting robotic dinosaurs could be fucking cool.
It could.
So like the thing with like with a lot of other Sony properties is they do lend themselves to be these like cinematic kind of
Yeah.
movie experiences where Horizon is more gamified, I think, than a lot of those other ones.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that there could be a lot of really, really cool things that they could be doing with that show, and
I think
I guess we'll never know.
the other issue potentially when I first saw this, what I thought to myself was, because I didn't actually read the story, I just saw the headline because I didn't have time at the time. But but what I thought was maybe it's going to cost them too much money to kind of make this show and because CGI and things like that.
Yeah,
Maybe,
but I think a lot of that stuff would be gauged out in front before everything is greenlit because they do talk costs because like
of course.
the scripts have to the scripts have to identify where your cost cutting measures are.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to go, okay, here's a cheap thing where, because like all the stuff in the past would be cheap because it'd just be like, oh, we need lab coats, we need set dressing, we
Yeah.
need like an apartment so we can see this scientist like relaxing on their days off. Like we need those little moments
Yeah.
to contrast big expensive robot dinosaur.
I wonder whether part of this, and look, the sort of time will tell, but I wonder whether part of this is maybe let's move away from a TV series adaptation and let's think about potentially a movie instead, because a movie, depending on how it's done, could actually be more cost effective and could make more money. Um, it's one of those really awkward ones because without good CGI, a Horizon show wouldn't work anyway. But CGI is one of the most expensive things that you can do, right? So,
Yeah, it's hard to say on the cost differential because of like, like if you're making a movie, you do want like big action spectacles, and you'll get that on the shows and stuff, but you can be a little bit more um kind of basic with your offerings on a TV show because like maybe this episode is just all exposition and then you have a couple little things, whereas a movie you kind of have to have the pacing to kind of keep it going. So I don't it's hard to say exactly. Like, neither of us work in Hollywood, so we don't make
yeah,
those
of course,
choices. So
we don't know the exact ins and outs, but it's all speculation. I'm, on the toxicity side of things, that's sad to hear just because you never want to hear about that kind of stuff, but there's always going to be people that are a certain way and other people. And I'm not defending this particular case, but what I would say is that I do think some of these toxicity conversations just come from situations where it's people that are clashing rather than. Do you know what I mean? Like, some of these people are perfectionists and they come across a certain way because they're perfectionists, but they're not necessarily really bad people as we are sometimes led to believe. And
yeah.
and I think we need to remember that when we have these conversations as well. But yeah, it's really, it's going to be interesting to see if Sony decide to do anything else with this or if they just completely drop it. Maybe, who knows?
Yeah,
Maybe they're going to have
they
a
could.
Lego movie after the Lego game.
Yeah, they could just essentially find a different showrunner. I mean, that's happened countless times before. But the showrunner is essentially like person that kind of gets the ball rolling with a lot of stuff. So you'd have to find somebody that would be passionate about it. Otherwise, you just become another Halo show, which was a show that feels made entirely without passion for the source material. Like, I don't know. It just feels like they could give like two shits about Halo games and stuff like that. Whereas with Horizon, like you want it to be as close to the games as you can because that's the kind of the core idea of that series. So, but yeah, it's hard to say exactly. I mean, like, we'll probably find out more in the next coming months because they definitely do have to get something kind of going, because you have
Yeah.
it's different when you have actors tied into certain things, because like,
hmm
an actor probably has 8 months to film this, and then they move on to another thing, and
hmm
then if
Did
they
you
that
see,
that conflicts, they get recasted.
while we're on that conversation, actually, because I don't think we have it in the news, um, but I did see that apparently the Watch Dogs movie has started filming.
Started filming. Yeah.
So that's going to be interesting to see because apparently in gaming, for the time being at least, that franchise is kind of on hold or dead. No one knows exactly.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're making a movie based off the first game, like,
Yeah,
how relevant is that anymore?
yeah, that's true.
Like, for me, for Watch Dogs, like, if like, I wouldn't want a movie based off the first one. If anything, I would want it based off the second one, where you have like a collective of
Mhm.
hackers, you have fun personalities, you have that those visuals and stuff of DedSec and all that stuff. Because
See, I
the first
can't
one for me,
go on. I was going to say I
the first one
kind of
for me,
agree, but for me, I agree in the sense that the characters are really cool in the second game and they're fun and,
yeah,
and it's witty and it has this kind of comedy element. And you could do that as a movie or a show, but I think that movies often like to be this kind of serious tone and and gritty, if you like. And actually, as someone who revisited the first Watch Dogs recently, I think that story is better than people remember it being. And I think the negativity around that game and that story and those characters kind of got caught up in that situation where it was like, well, this game isn't what we were originally sold because it looked completely different before and all these kind of things, right? Um, So yeah, but I am with you that the tone of the second one is more interesting and there's more nuance to it. I just wonder whether
yeah.
the first one would better fit a movie.
Well, I mean, like, you take a look at like Hackers, the definitive like Hackers movie, and that was serious, but it still had fun elements and stuff. But for me, it's like, I would rather have something that's like, this is a weird comparison, but I'm speaking strictly out of tone. But I would rather have something more like Baby Driver than Jack Reacher.
Okay,
Where it
I understand that
like,
comparison.
like Edgar Wright, essentially, like, because that was his movie, and then like Scott Pilgrim and stuff. Like, he makes movies that do can have serious tones, but
Yeah.
he kind of has levity and fun to it. It's like, I don't know, like, for me, for a Watch Dogs movie, it's like, I don't know if I want Aiden Pierce as
Okay.
like as the lead and stuff like that. Like, I don't know. Like, I again, like, I don't think I don't like the first Watch Dogs as much. Like, I have an Aiden Pierce statue somewhere around here. Um, but because I got the collector's edition at EB Games for, it was like $10 or something like
Oh
that. It was on
wow.
clearance, so that's the only reason I have it. Um, but no, like, for me, it's like, I definitely prefer Watch Dogs 2 over the first one. I just thought the characters and stuff were a lot more fun, and I think that you can find a good story in there, because then when you have those that ensemble, you have people going like, okay, I can identify with this person, I can identify with this person, so
Yeah.
the audience feels more inclined. And ensemble films are
Yeah.
sometimes more beloved because of
What
those types of things.
See, what I'd actually be quite interested in, and I'm going to go on a small tangent here, but I'll tie it back into what I'm saying. I watched Furiosa the other day,
Yeah, I still gotta watch that.
Mad Max film, and
I gotta watch that today.
that was honestly fantastic. It deserved more success. That's a separate conversation, but it was fantastic. And there are things in there that explore the universe and expand on things in a way that are really interesting, and they set up potential other stories that can be told, but ways that they can also tie it back into the mainline situation. And what I'd quite like to see from a Watch Dogs movie personally is actually like a prequel to the first game, and then have this situation where maybe you introduce Aiden Pierce or you allude to him somehow within the movie, and then you can kind of build towards Watch Dogs 1 and Watch Dogs 2, the video games, maybe being one kind of thing, sort of, because Aiden Pierce also shows up in, do you know what I mean? Like, he shows up in
Yeah.
DLC and things. So I think there's ways that you can mash Watch Dogs as a game franchise together to make something really cool as a movie. But this, more than anything, this gives me hope that if this movie is a decent success, which I think it has a chance at least of being because the subject matter is something people have always found interesting. Maybe Ubisoft decide to revisit the game franchise at some point, because I still think there's a lot of potential there that they haven't hit with the Watch Dogs franchise.
I don't know if they know what to do with Watch Dogs anymore. Because all three games have had completely, they've been reinventing themselves.
Each
So I think
time,
that they
right?
just don't. Yeah,
But
I just don't think
but
they
in
have
a
an
way, I
idea.
think that's what causes the problem, because got you haven't found a specific identity beyond
Yeah.
we are the hacking game about hackers. You went for the serious tone and it didn't quite work the first time. Then you went for the comedic kind of slapstick tone of the second game, and then the third game was kind of this different style of game altogether, which could be really comedic, but was also really serious at the same time. It was kind of in between the first two in a tonal sense. And it obviously had a different gameplay mechanic, which I actually really liked because I thought it was quite
Mm.
interesting. But yeah, I just don't know. Like you said, I don't know if they know what to do with it, and I don't know what I would do with it if I was in control to kind of make it something. But when I'm playing, and we'll talk about this game a bit later, but when I'm playing X Defiant and I use the Watch Dogs class in that game, and you hear like the little witty announcer calling things out to you and stuff, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I really like this tone, and I really like these characters, and I would like to see more of it. I just don't know how they do it, and I have a fear that Watch Dogs is going to become another Ubisoft franchise that is a bit like Prince of Persia and Splinter Cell, where it probably dies for a really long time, and then when it comes back, it's probably mostly remakes or something completely different again.
If I had to put money on Watch Dogs coming back, it
Mm-hmm.
would be that of a live service game.
Interesting. Interesting.
Like honestly, I think Ubisoft would just do that.
Interesting. I wouldn't be against it. Like a Watch Dogs that was a Division style game could be really interesting, I think. Could be really interesting.
Alrighty.
But let's carry on with the news here.
Yeah. So Nintendo has ended its Wii U repair support program, citing a lack of parts. The repair service, which Nintendo has maintained for all of its hardware long after they've been on general sale, allows users to submit their consoles to Nintendo for either repair using official parts or replacement hardware. Last year, the company announced that once the current stock of replacement parts for the Wii U ended, the service would conclude, which has now happened. The Wii U features a large tablet controller, which is not only prone to issues, but was never sold separately from the Wii U console itself, meaning stocks of the controller, which is required to play the system, are becoming more limited as time passes. Online play for the Wii U shut down earlier this year. Nintendo has already closed the eShops for its systems back in March of 2023, but players were still able to use the system online until April. So yeah, this is like one of those things where like when you have a lot of proprietary equipment as part of your consoles and stuff, it becomes a lot harder to kind of like
especially
maintain for official repair.
especially when that console you're speaking about wasn't successful enough for you to even support for very long. And
Yeah.
like if we were talking about the Switch here, for example, I expect that the Switch will have repair support for a really long time because there's so
Yeah.
many of them out there that it's almost, impossible for them to not offer that. But I think the Wii U, and I don't remember the exact sales numbers, but it was something like 12 million, or like off the top of my head, I believe it was something like 12 million. And it was just like a nothing, like most people didn't
Yeah,
even,
13.56 million.
yeah,
And like the Switch will sell that this year.
yeah.
Um
So,
yeah, like honestly, I only have my Wii U for Xenoblade Chronicles X. Once that gets ported to the Switch or Switch 2 or whatever,
fair enough.
um I won't need to ever turn my Wii U on.
Before we move to the next news story, I do have one question regarding the Wii U. Is it the
Yeah.
biggest? We've had some big failures in gaming, but in modern gaming, is it the biggest failure? Considering that it was a Nintendo device and it came after the
Oh,
Wii, and most people didn't even realize it was a next generation thing, they just thought it was like this add on thing that you didn't really need.
I think the worst thing with the Wii U is that it was not marketed correctly for consumers. Because I mean, a lot of people will probably say like the Xbox One just because like they cannibalized their entire business within the first couple months, and that just led to everything. But at the exact same time, they kind of rose from that, and Game Pass probably wouldn't exist
Without
if it
that,
wasn't for
yeah.
Xbox's failures. So there is like learning from your mistakes and stuff like that. Whereas like the Switch kind of did that as well too, because like Nintendo knew that their handhelds were doing extremely well
Hmm.
because like the 3DS is still one of like the best selling, items pretty much out there. Um, so I think that they learned a lot from it as well too. And hopefully they kind of learn that with the Switch 2 as well,
Yeah.
and that they just don't call it like, something similar.
What would you hope, like, obviously the Switch 2 reveal is going to come at some point soon because they've basically alluded that it is coming next year. Um,
Yeah.
what is your biggest hope with that device that we're going to see? If you could see like one big improvement or one
Well,
massive lesson learned.
I think honestly, it's just to have the power where you're not completely outmatched like 2 years after you release your console.
Okay.
Because like the Switch has been going for about 7 or 8 years or whatever like that now. And within the second or third year, like it was already like when they released like The Witcher 3 on Switch,
Hmm.
that was when it's like this console is just lacks any power whatsoever to run with the big boys,
Yeah.
in regards to those types of games.
And
Because Nintendo themselves,
that's the thing, is Nintendo aren't even trying to do that, right? And I've always said, and I know that I'm in the minority here, and I know that it will never happen because of how Nintendo work, but I'd love them to just take one more try. One more try at the traditional console with actual power in it would be nice. Like, because,
no, I don't think they ever will. Because like again, having it as a handheld is one of the reasons why it has just been so successful. If it was just a locked to a box type of thing, it would have sold maybe a third of what it has.
yeah, that's true.
Um,
That's true. And I guess, it's handhelds have always been strong for Nintendo, and this was their way of let's combine both so that we don't let down too much of either audience. But they need to get, you know, they need to try and get stronger parts and just more power for people essentially. But what else do we have in the news today?
plenty. PlayStation is returning to the Tokyo Game Show after not being there for what, 4 years. The trade show, which will take place in September, will see 731 exhibitors across 3190 booths. The show will take place in the Makuhari Messe in Miyahama-ku, Chiba City, Chiba Prefecture. Sony was present at Tokyo Game Show 2023, but only only presented independent titles as part of its involvement in the show. Capcom, Konami, and other large Japanese publishers have also been announced as attendees of this year's show. It's currently unclear what Sony plans to exhibit at the show, as its largest currently announced titles, such as Astrobot, will have been released by the time the show takes place. It is expected that 250,000 visitors will attend the show when it takes place from September 26th to December 29th. The PlayStation maker's attendance was under question following recent news that it has reportedly decided not to attend Gamescom 2024. Sony most recently appeared at Gamescom in 2019, which was the last in-person edition of the show before COVID-19 pandemic. Sony recently expects its PlayStation 5 hardware to decline during its current year, which runs from March to March 2025, and confirmed it plans to release no major existing titles during this 12-month period. So yeah, like Sony has been notorious for not kind of uh, attending a lot of these shows.
Yeah.
I think major studios have as well too. Like they've been, take a look at E3 and all that kind of stuff. Everybody's been kind of creating their own thing, but Sony's been very notorious, and especially attending Tokyo Game Show with nothing announced. Like
Yeah.
unless they're going to announce things then.
I mean, I'm assuming, and I could be wrong, but it would kind of make sense to me. Of, because TGS is when? Do we have a date for that?
September 26th to September 29th.
Okay, so I'm assuming that if that PS5 Pro is coming this year, then they have to show it by the end of September, right? So maybe they show it first at TGS, because I can't think of anything else they'd really have to show. I do find it interesting that they're not doing Gamescom this year, but also on the other side of this coin, Xbox are not doing Tokyo Game Show this year, and they have done for the last few years.
I mean, they shut down their only Japanese studio. Why would they even show up?
I mean, they've been quite strong with partnerships with Japanese partners in the last few years, right? So it is a bit of a surprise to not see them show up, but then everything we've heard suggests that they have a few things to announce at Gamescom. So I wonder whether this is kind of a story of both of these companies getting out of each other's way a little bit, and luckily that's the one kind of advantage of where the industry has gone, in the sense that we now don't have to step on each other's toes, and we can allow each other to have our own sort of time. And PlayStation is in a weird place, as we've discussed before, where they don't have a lot right now. Like the fact that they themselves had to come out and sort of quell all expectations for this year by saying, yeah, we're not releasing anything major until after at least March next year, kind of thing. And it's like, I get
the game, Sony.
I get why they did that, don't get me wrong. I also feel a little bit disheartened, especially for the Astrobot game, because that shows you that they just don't, even though that game looks fantastic, they don't consider that to be a major game. And in a way, I think that's wrong. Like, I think they should actually consider that to be a major game, because it's their mascot character. It's the closest thing that they have to Mario. Let's be honest. it's so, but again, it's that thing of, because that's all they really have this year, like they don't have a lot at all, and they've relied heavily on third party and second party things this year. And there's no problem with that, but I think that we're so used to them having so much, and part of them not showing up at shows as much since COVID is that if we look at it, they haven't really had a lot. Other than that PS5 launch window and the first half of the first year, they haven't had a lot. Like, they haven't had a ton of things. It's been quite a slow time for them. But obviously what always gets them out of that is they do third-party deals, they have high quality most of the time, and I think that
Yeah.
gives them a lot of leeway. Um, if they were a bit more mixed in quality and things like that, I think there would be a huge conversation now of, oh, PlayStation doesn't really have any games. Do you know what I mean? That's what we would be hearing, but we're not hearing it because they've earned the right to have some leeway. I just wonder when they're going to start doing more shows again, or maybe showing up at some of these bigger events more again, because they used to before the pandemic happened, because they had a lot to speak about. And since the pandemic, they haven't had as much to speak about. And they haven't even, they've done what, 2 showcases in 4 years, which are their bigger events when they sort of reveal things. And then they've had a few state of plays here and there, which have mostly been nothing, if we're being honest. So
Yeah,
them,
they're contractually obligated third party promotion stuff.
yeah. So they are showing up to TGS with nothing announced, and the only thing I can think is it must be the PS5 Pro, because that's the only thing that we've heard about that is expected to come this year that they could possibly announce that is meaningful, surely. Unless they're lying about not having anything major, or unless that's where they're first gonna reveal Ghost of Tsushima 2 kind of thing, is like,
Yeah.
that could be a possibility as well. Because the other thing is, I'm starting to think, with the fact they're saying they expect their console sales to fall this year. I know they had a really strong year last year, but surely if you're about to bring out a pro console, you wouldn't expect your sales to fall, right? You'd expect them to go up, because
Yeah.
because you're bringing out a new addition to that family that you would expect people who have existing PlayStations to buy, as well as people who don't have PlayStations. So, I'm not saying the Pro doesn't exist, but it does make me wonder if plans have changed for whatever the Pro is. But we'll
Yeah,
see.
sure.
We'll see what they do. But for now, let's carry on with the news.
All right. So, right here, 3 more Activision Blizzard titles will reportedly be added to Game Pass in the near future. That's according to ex-computer writer Extra 1S, who has a strong recent track record of revealing upcoming Game Pass titles ahead of their official confirmation. According to the leaker, Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy will join Game Pass in August, a claim that has been corroborated by Windows Central. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 and the Spyro Reignited trilogy are also coming to Game Pass very soon, they claimed. This is on top of some Xbox Game Pass titles that have been actually revealed and are going to be coming out fairly soon. And that is Journey to the Savage Planet, Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2, Cricket 24, The Case of the Golden Idol, Neon White, Chia, Magical Delicacy, and Flock. Um, so yeah, like going into like the Activision stuff. I mean, this is not surprising. I mean,
No.
we were expecting Activision titles to eventually hit those. I know that the Transformers games have been resolicited. They're not purchasable, but
But they're on
they
the
have
store, right? You can
placeholders.
see them. And because they're
Yeah,
on the store, that pretty much confirms that even though you might not be able to buy them, it does mean that if you own them, they're probably going to be playable soon.
yeah.
um so yeah, it's interesting because they're also handling it slightly differently to how they did the Bethesda thing, where with Bethesda it was one massive drop, right? Um this is more like, let's space it out, and I do think part of that is, without seeming, negative on Bethesda, Activision in their back catalogue arguably have a lot more things that people are actually looking forward to, and I think you can space it out more. Like Diablo 4 came
I
to Game
think you have
Pass
to.
a few
I think you
months
have to
ago.
space it out.
I think that it would be really clever if over the next 6 months for the rest of the year we see them do maybe 3 or 4 Activision titles a year, like a month, sorry, and then you let, and then what you do, if you're super clever, is when it gets to October, because they obviously do 2 Game Pass drops a month, right? When it gets to October, what you do is the start of October, end of September, that's when you drop the old Call of Duty games on Game Pass. And
Mm.
then the end of October, you have the brand new Call of Duty game on Game Pass. Do you know what I mean? I think there are ways they
Yeah,
can space
I
it
think
out that's really interesting.
I think you also have to space it out based off the initial deals that you have kind of worked out with other third-party products or
Yes.
third-party publishers. So I mean, like a lot of those deals are probably booked a year in advance, and the Call of Duty stuff's still kind of fairly recent. So like, it's hard to say exactly when they'll do it, but yeah, I think that they will eventually. I think by the end of this year, I think everything on Activision will be available on Game Pass.
Yeah, I think so. I think it would be, if I was to guess, based on when things got relisted and when certain games have had Windows Store versions made and that kind of thing, I would imagine that Crash, Spyro, and Tony Hawk's, I actually think they're probably all coming next month. This is just me guessing. I think they're probably all coming next month. And then I would imagine that the following month we'll see, if they're going to be relisted for sale, it means we will see the Transformers games drop. I think that would be September, because the way it's happened so far, if you've been paying attention to it, is they've either relisted things or existing things have had brand new Windows Store versions made, and then all of a sudden they start talking about, oh, they're coming soon. And then, do you see what I mean? So I do think
Mm.
there's a cadence that is happening here that's going to be really interesting to see. I agree with you, Jeff, that by the end of the year, I think we'll see all, or at least most, of the Activision catalogue being available on Game Pass, and I think that's a very good thing. So, yeah, let's carry on, shall we, with the news? Because I believe we have a lot more news to talk about.
A fair bit. A couple stories don't need too much revisiting here, but Final Fantasy creator um, Hironobu Sakaguchi has said that he's not interested in working on the Square Enix series again or in bringing classic Mistwalker games to new platforms. The Square Enix veteran who left the company over 20 years ago after working there for 2 decades recently teamed up with the Japanese publisher to bring mobile game RPG Fantasian to consoles this year. In an interview with Bloomberg, Sakaguchi said he's not interested in working on Final Fantasy again, partly because he switched to a consumer rather than a creator. Now I almost live in Final Fantasy 14, he said later. If I take on Final Fantasy brand again, I don't know if I'll be able to generally enjoy Final Fantasy 14 as much. Reiterating comments he made in a VGC article, a VC interview in 2021, Sakaguchi also reported that he has no desire to remaster old Mistwalker games like Lost Odyssey and Blue Dragon. Um, a lot of people have been wanting Lost Odyssey to be remastered in some way or a sequel, but yeah, he pretty much has denied that entirely. Um, because Lost Odyssey was like a big get for Xbox 360 back in the day.
It was a massive one, right? And Blue Dragon was part of that push as well. We have heard rumblings that some sort of Blue Dragon remaster or remake is happening, but it's probably another team doing it if that does exist. Um, Lost Odyssey is obviously the big one. I've never played it myself, but everything I've heard is like,
I can't remember if I played it. I do own it, but I can't remember if I've ever actually played it.
yeah. So and it's
Hmm.
one of those where it's like, even though I haven't played it, literally every single person I know that has played it sort of says, if you like this style of game, this is a must play video game. So
Yeah.
I can understand why people would want it. It's a shame that the man himself doesn't want to do it. Hopefully someone else will be able to, and he's okay with that. Um but it seems like maybe he just doesn't really want to make games anymore. It's that is kind of how it's coming across to me, based on this story at least.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to say exactly, like, because like sometimes you just need the creative spark to kind of get back into certain things. But I mean, hey, he's still he's not like resentful against the Final Fantasy brand or anything like that because he says he loves playing 14. So
Yeah,
it is
good,
what it
good for
is.
him. What else do
All
we have
right.
here?
Veteran designer Yoshiki Okamoto says he hopes Assassin's Creed Shadows succeeds so that it gives some validation to a game he produced in the past. Okamoto, who worked for Capcom for nearly 2 decades and produced such titles as Street Fighter II and Final Fight, said on his YouTube channel that Ubisoft's latest game reminds him of another he produced, PS2 title Genji Dawn of the Samurai. When Okamoto left Capcom, he founded Game Republic, and its first game was Genji. Genji is set in an ancient Japan and features two protagonists, a fast and agile character named Yoshitsune, and I butchered that entirely, and a slow, powerful character called Benki. According to Okamoto, as spotted by Assassin's Creed Shadows reminds him of Genji given its ancient Japan setting and its use of two playable protagonists, speedy ninja Naoe, and slow and powerful samurai Yasuka. Or yes, I can't pronounce these names at all.
It's Naoe
Yasuke.
and Yasuke.
Now, yeah, okay, all right. In his video, Okamoto said that when he saw the trailer for Shadows, it reminded him of his time at Game Republic working on Genji. He explained that they wanted to make a game with a fast protagonist and a powerful one, but said the team couldn't pull it off well enough. He says he hopes Ubisoft can fulfill the dream he couldn't achieve, and joked that if Shadows sells well, it will prove the difference in ability between Ubisoft and him. However, he also noted that if the game does sell well, he will take some self satisfaction from it because it will prove that the concept behind Genji was a sound one, even if the final result wasn't as good as he had hoped for.
Yeah,
Okamoto said that nobody wants to look back on something they did and acknowledge that it was a complete mistake, so he hopes that Shadows will give him the reassurance that even though he and his team were not good enough to deliver with Genji, what they were trying to do was at least right.
yeah. I
Um,
think as a creator, I have a small thing to say on this, and that is I don't think any idea is ever completely wrong. I think there's always something like in your creative mind there's always something that tells you this is going to work. And I think that sometimes, especially in gaming, certain styles of game or certain concepts, if you like, just come too early and the tech isn't there to support them. Um, so yeah, I can understand what he's saying about kind of wanting this validation and hoping that Shadows is able to at least validate for him that the concept he had was a good one. And I can completely understand that because yeah, no game, even the worst games in the world, most of the time have something cool conceptually about them. Like, I'm sure that Jeff, you could think of a bad game right now and you go, but that concept in it was really cool. It's.
Yeah, except for Bravo Team, like Bravo Team VR, there was nothing redeemable. That just should not have existed. That was just a contractual obligation to make some VR games.
Oh,
And there's
well.
Fast and Furious Crossroad as well. There was nothing redeemable with that one either.
That's true. That's true. But yeah, so this is,
So
this is a nice little story, and I can understand from a creator perspective exactly why this creator would feel this way, because I would feel the same. I think if I made something and it didn't succeed, and then someone took that concept, or at least the base level of the concept, and built upon it and did it in their own way, and it did succeed, that would give me some validation that at least what I had in mind was worth doing and was able to work. So, yeah, credit to
do you
this
think
person.
that do you think that when he plays through Shadows that he'll be upset that there's no giant crab to hit for the weak point? I think, because I mean, it's based off real Japanese history, so you got to have that giant crab. All right. Um. All right. Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster will be released in September. Capcom has announced. As confirmed during Capcom Next, the remaster of the 2006 game will be released on September 19th. This remaster will include quality of life improvements such as autosaving, revamped controls, improved UI, and more. Capcom also confirmed that the game will be remastered using the RE engine, Capcom's versatile engine behind its recent string of hits. All of the graphics, including the characters' and environments, have been renewed, and greatly improved over the original, reads the game's description on its Steam page. Characters' facial expressions, material textures, and blood splatter all look much more realistic. Overwhelming hordes of zombies fill the screen with completely remade graphics. The game's digital deluxe edition will include 17 extra costumes for Frank, and 17 music tracks will be added or will be played throughout the in-game mall. Developed by Capcom Japan and produced by Kenji Inafune, the original Dead Rising was released in 2006. It received an HD remaster for modern platforms in 2016. The game stars protagonist Frank West, a photojournalist who gets trapped in the zombie-infested shopping mall in the fictional town of Willamette, Colorado. It's also worth pointing out that Frank has been recast. The original voice actor was not asked to come back and is a completely new voice. And I think Frank looks a little older
He
in
does.
this remake.
Yeah, he does.
Um, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I was never a fan of the original Dead Rising. I liked the gameplay. I just hated the timed stuff in terms of like how to like
I
beat the game
think
and stuff.
I think
The timer stuff.
most people did hate that timed stuff. I I didn't dislike I disliked it, but I could put up with it for the rest of the game if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in this one just to see what sort of quality of life improvements they've made and how they've maybe tweaked things to lessen that impact slightly, because I don't think they'll completely remove the timed things, but I think they might adjust how they work or something like that. Um, it's definitely one I'm interested in. Whether I'm gonna pick it up or not, who knows? I did see the gameplay and I think it looks quite good. Like the all the new assets actually look really good. Like for do you
Think
know
we'll get a Monster Hunter sword?
that would be cool. That would be really cool, actually. Like, I think they could do something like that. That's the thing, right? Like, Dead Rising is the franchise where they can just have fun and just be a little bit
Yeah.
crazy and a little bit wild. I think it's interesting that obviously, because the original Dead Rising was at least a timed exclusive to the Xbox 360, I believe. Um, it was at least a timed exclusive. I remember that, and what they've done is if you pre-order the game or if you pre-order certain editions of the game, you can actually get the old school model of Frank to use. Like, so you can use the old Frank, I believe, from the 360 version of the game in this
All right.
new like redesigned, reimagined thing. So yeah, I'm gonna keep an eye on it. It's not one that it's like I don't think is gonna blow anybody away, but what I would say is that if you were too young to play it or if you haven't played it before, it is a franchise that is worth checking out, and this might be a good place to start with it because they are fun to play at the very least.
I have the collector's edition for the first one, I think. That came with like the Zombrex pen.
Yeah, yeah,
Or maybe
yeah.
it's the second
That might
one.
be the
I think it was the
second one.
second one.
Mm,
Yeah, because the guy needed the injections or something for
yeah,
his little girl or something like that.
yeah.
But I don't know. I like the third Dead Rising, like the co-op nature of it. Like
Yeah, the
me
one
and
that
Becky, like
nobody
we
liked, right?
we played the crap out of that. Like I still have a video. We were like slapping each other with like sex toys and stuff like that. It was such a fun game. Holy hell!
Yeah, good launch game for the Xbox One as well. Who nobody remembers, but the Xbox One had really good launch games. So, you
Yeah.
know, But yeah, hopefully this is a good return for the franchise, because I know some people really liked Dead Rising 4. I didn't like it that much. I just
I played like an hour of it,
mm, yeah.
and I think that was about it.
So hopefully, this can recapture at least the original essence of what Dead Rising is, and then they can build on something from there. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, because there was a lot of like interesting stories and stuff about Dead Rising, how like Xbox attempted to like maneuver it to be their Last of Us kind of game and stuff, and then they
Yeah.
had to scrap that because Capcom found out, and then
Yeah.
a whole
It
bunch of shit.
it was originally meant to be something quite different, right? And then yeah, I think it went through changes, and that's why
Yeah,
there
and then
was that's why for the third game there was a slightly more serious and slightly darker tone, but then it still had
yeah,
that comedic stuff as well. So it's interesting.
because there was one that was made where it was going to be like Dead Rising in like Mexico or something like that, and
Mm,
then that was scrapped and whatnot. So
yeah, it's interesting because you wonder if that situation is why Xbox lost the kind of almost like first refusal exclusivity to the franchise, because like I said, I'm pretty sure those first two games were at least timed exclusive on the 360, and obviously the third one I believe was full exclusive. It never came to PS4,
yeah,
right?
for Xbox One,
So
I'm not too sure, but
so
yeah, it
um
was fun.
so yeah,
It
yeah,
was
it's
really fun.
fun game. But is that all the news we have? Are we done with news?
Yes, that was
Okay.
everything that I could scrounge up this morning.
Well, let's talk a bit about what we've been playing then, shall we? And I'll go first because my games are
Sure.
not quite as important to the topic we're going to speak about a bit later. But I've played an early access game that I think is really interesting, and it is Deep Rock Galactic Survivor. For those of you, I don't know if you've played Deep Rock Galactic, Jeff. It's
Play a little bit, but then no one else was playing, so I couldn't really like justify playing a game that's meant for co-op. And
Okay, so you at least know what Deep Rock Galactic is. Deep Rock Galactic Survivor is made by the same studio, I believe, and it's an early access game on Steam at the moment. Probably works on the Steam Deck, but I haven't checked that. And it's kind of this top down, almost like Vampire Survivor, Hades style game where it's a roguelike where
Vampire
you're
Survivor or V Rising.
Vampire Survivor. So you know how like you're
Yeah.
moving
Oh, okay.
around, you're killing these enemies are chasing you.
Yeah.
Um, but it has more gameplay than Vampire Survivor, because while this is happening, you are having to go around mining certain things like gold or other resources, which allow you to get upgrades between rounds. And every time you level up, you also get to choose a random upgrade. So it has like this roguelike element to it. Um, and yeah, it's really
Oh yeah,
cool.
I see.
It's really cool. I've only played about 2 hours of it so far, and it is early access, but they've had three major updates at the moment because it launched a bit earlier in the year. Um,
Hmm.
and I really can't wait to see what they do with it, because it was one of those where it's like I played it, my first run lasted about 10 minutes, and then I just wanted to keep playing and keep playing, because certain resources, like in Hades, are permanent, right? So you get certain resources that allow you to then permanently upgrade your stats and certain things, which make it easier the next time you go in. Like with Vampire Survivors, you have different characters that you eventually unlock that have different things, like different styles of weapon, and therefore different upgrades and different gameplay options, that kind of thing. So it has a lot to it, and I'm really impressed so far. I obviously won't be doing a review at the moment for the site, but if I have time when this game eventually reaches its 1.0 release, I will go back and do a full review of it for sure, because it's really fun, and I actually do think you'd enjoy it, Jeff. So if it does run on
That looks
Steam Deck, I would recommend it. But I have also played. If you watched the previous episode, you might have guessed this. We had our friend Keith Mitchell on from the Outer Haven, and Keith and Jeff were talking a lot about Elden Ring DLC. And I've tried Elden Ring before, as you would know, on console, but it doesn't run amazingly on console. It runs well enough, like it's playable, but it
Oh yeah.
also, being such a tough game to understand, with some then kind of limited performance, if you will, it was kind of like I struggled to get into it, and me and Jeff played quite a bit of it in co-op. He helped me out quite a lot, um, and then I kind of just gave up. But then after hearing the guys talk about the DLC last week, I was like, oh, I want to give it another try. And I looked on Steam and it was on sale. So I got the base game with the DLC for like 50 British pounds. It was a pretty good deal, like, because it's not bundled on Steam, unfortunately. If you don't own it on Xbox, there is actually a bundle you can buy with the base game and the DLC, but on Steam it isn't bundled. Um, and I've played maybe about 7 hours now. Been playing a little bit with Keith, and he's kind of given me some tips of what to do and what kind of build I should be going for, because I've gone for an astrologer who last time I was playing as like the knight kind of guy. Now I've gone for like a magic thing, and we're gonna see how that goes. But I've beat that first boss, and we're kind of in the castle area, just rambling around trying to find different things. I've been invaded twice. I wish I could turn off invaders and just play in co-op, but you can't have co-op and turn off invaders. It's very weird to me. Um, and I kind of maintain what I've always said about Elden Ring so far, is that I understand why people love it, but to me, at least from what I've been able to play in my various times of playing it, it is an amazing game, and it's clearly one of the best games ever made. You can tell by how it's designed, but I don't get that sense that anything about it is really that unique. I think it's just a combination of a lot of things I've seen before, executed to a very high level. And the way that people talk about the game is like it does something really unique. And so far, I'm not sure that it does, but maybe that's just me.
Well, it's one of those games to me like that you get a lot of open world games that kind of have all the parts and pieces, but they don't really make it feel like it's your adventure.
Hmm.
So with like Elden Ring, like you can literally go in any direction
Straight
and you
away,
will
yeah.
find something that kind of creates this like fun story and like aesthetically it's one of the best looking games
It
out there.
is. It's an
Like it is just
amazing looking game.
gorgeous. Oh, just wait till you see the DLC. It's even more visually impressive.
Why don't we get on to the
Um,
DLC, because you have been playing it? So why don't you talk a bit about that?
yeah, so I've beat Shadow of the Erd Tree. I still have like a few like of the lesser bosses, like like a spirit type of knight type of thing, or like some of the red enemies and stuff. So I still have little bits and pieces, but I beat the final boss and got all that stuff. And the final boss is very very tough. So much stuff that I just basically was just like summoning help and all that kind of stuff. And then basically, not the originator, but someone who was named Let Me Solo Him. I'm like, yeah, sure, let's do this. And then we went in there and yeah, he soloed him. And that's how I've beaten Shadow of the Urchery.
So you,
Um,
so
but
you
like,
technically didn't beat the final boss, but you did,
oh,
really.
I was present. I was cheering them on. If anything, it was kind of my like, my gumption that really that saw it through.
Yeah,
But yeah, like for I mean, like I'm not terribly great at a lot of these games and stuff like that.
yeah.
So like, like I'm going to use the tools that
Oh,
are presented in
absolutely,
the
and you
game.
should, and you
Um,
should. Like
yeah,
that is what they are
and
there
like
for.
yeah, like the one thing with this DLC is like you have to track down the Spirit Ashes and Shadow Tree Fragments in order to really benefit from the stat increases because your main level in the base Elden Ring means nothing here.
Yeah.
So you have to like, because I think you can get, I don't know what kind of level you can get to the Spirit Ashes, but you can get to level 20, I believe, with the Shadow Tree fragments, which look like they're pronounced Skadoo but it's actually just the same way that jail and jail are, you know, kind of pronounced and stuff. So it's Shadow Tree fragments.
Yes.
Um, but no, the DLC is, it feels like they took a lot of Dark Souls sensibilities and put them into Elden Ring. So there's a lot more of a focused and concise nature to how its level design is kind of relayed. I think its difficulty is largely fine. I will say that some bosses have a type of reach that doesn't feel as fair, and there's a lot more cheapness to a few attacks that some enemies have, and some bosses have that don't quite fall in line with what they were doing with base Elden Ring.
Yes.
I think the difficulty though is fine because again, it's one of those things that it pushes you to find those Shadow Tree fragments and the Spirit Ash
Yeah,
in
it wants
enhancements
you
as well
to
too.
engage with what's in the world, right? So it's part
Yeah,
of the design. So that I have no
yeah,
problem with that. Um, Going back to the base game for a second, because you obviously talked about how you used co-op to beat the final boss of the DLC, and I beat the first boss in the base game, whose name escapes me right now. He's kind of on the lead up to the castle.
yeah. It's
Um,
Margot. Elden Ring first boss. It's yeah, Margit the Fell Omen.
yes, and that was an interesting one because Keith was with me, but he actually did a new game plus, so his character isn't as powerful as he necessarily would be. And obviously the way the scaling works is like he scales down to my level anyway to, because they still want the game to be somewhat difficult. And yeah, it was like what I found was it's so much about dodging. Like the game, you can parry, but you do not need to parry. Like if you dodge well and you can just learn, like even if you can learn the most basic, oh they're about to try and hit me, and you can time that level of dodge,
Yeah, and
you'll
there's
do
some
reasonably well.
dodges that like most people will want to dodge away, but there's some attacks where you'll want to dodge into. And that
Yes.
kind of changes that aspect of it.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
yeah, like
What I will say is be careful of do not dodge off of the edge of a castle and kill yourself because I've done that a couple of times. Oh yeah. So hopefully,
yeah.
when you talk about the more concise nature of the design and that kind of stuff, I'm looking forward to eventually getting to the DLC. I just don't know how long it's gonna take me to get there.
Well, the base game for Elden Ring's about 100 hours. So
Fair enough.
because like you don't like because I mean again like I played like yeah like 100 hours of Elden Ring, but I also like beat every single recorded boss in that game. Like Annie Cortez had like a list of like the bosses and like where to find them and stuff. So like when I beat the boss at the end of Elden Ring, I basically looked at the list. I'm like, okay, I have 17 left, and I basically just went on a journey to like kill all of those. So like I've killed every single boss
Nice.
in Elden Ring, and I'm going now to defeat every single boss in Shadow of the Ur Tree, and I think I have 9
Oh.
fights left to do.
Oh wow. Okay. Okay. Not
But
too many.
yeah, Shadow of the Ur Tree is fantastic. Like a lot of its bosses are neat.
Is it
Um,
does it live up to the greatest DLC of all time that some have been calling it?
yeah, like like it is extremely well crafted. Um, to kind of extend your playtime with it, and it does something new with like making sure that you're getting that sense of like rediscovery because like its world is just massive and like it is like a smaller map than the base Elden Ring. but it doesn't feel that way. And again, you're still finding like tons of little things. I think that it really succeeds in what it's what it in the reason of why it exists.
Yeah.
Like it gives you more of that Elden Ring, but it also feels like not like a sequel, but it feels like a real expansion to what Elden Ring is and what it should be. Um, Again, like the my the only complaint I have with Shadow of the Erdtree is the exact same complaint I had with base Elden Ring, and that is that the co-op is just incredibly clunky,
Yeah.
and mods have shown how it should be.
Hmm. So when me and Keith went to play yesterday, because we're not playing using the mod, just because the way that that works would mean that Keith would have to start a brand new character, and then every time we want to play we'd have to use the mod, and it's just, although the mod is great from my understanding, it just kind of adds this extra layer of having to sort
Yeah, because
something out every time.
it allows you to have your spirit ashes out.
Yeah.
Um, and when you're playing exclusively in co-op and you can't use those, it's a mechanic in the game that you're not able to use.
Yes.
So the co-op anywhere mod for Elden Ring is one of those things where it's like it takes that same system and just improves it
Yeah.
tenfold because you can both have your horse now.
Yeah.
So
And
like
and
when
that
you're
and that is exactly how it should be, because what I was going to say is, me and Keith, when we were trying to play on PC yesterday, it actually took us 25 to 30 minutes to get the co-op working. Like, and this is the base game co-op. It should not be that hard. I should be able to click a button and invite
yeah,
my
there
friends to
was
play.
yeah, there was a guy that I was trying to get to help me with the dragon and the dragon pit in the DLC, and he's like, "Yeah, I put the the thing down
Hmm.
and all that kind of stuff to like um figure out where he put his like summon down."
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it was just an absolute like nightmare in regards to like nothing was showing up. Um, y- y- like I it would be like, hey, like my summon symbol is like here, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm like, I don't see it.
Yeah. And the
Like I
fact that
don't see it,
you
and I kept sending him pictures. I'm like, see,
yeah.
there's no symbol there.
And the fact that you have to keep, like, as someone who's trying to call somebody to help you, the fact that you have to keep using the cooling remedy or whatever, and it's like that's
Yeah,
something you have to craft in the game, that adds a level of, like, I know it's basic, you only have to pick these flowers and then craft it,
yeah,
but it's a barrier that doesn't need to be there. uh,
yeah. It's I think it's them sticking to their traditions because like they, that's kind of what they've done for the summoning stuff and before is it's always had lore implications and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, it's
yeah,
just, I really hope, and I don't have faith that they will, because I think they know that this is something people want them to do differently and they just don't want to. But
yeah,
I really hope that after seeing such a strong reaction to the way it works in Elden Ring, um, that they will change how they implement it for the future, because it needs to be better. Like, you know, one, if it was better, you'd probably have way more people playing the game. Like, there are people I know that haven't bought this game just because they heard how difficult the co op is, because they want to play it in co op, but the barrier and the way at
yeah. They should
which
just
you
play
have to
Lords of the
use.
Fallen instead because that has like amazing co-op. You can
Yeah,
play through the whole game and you never get disconnected.
yeah, so yeah, and one thing that I think they could change, which is completely reasonable, is, like I said earlier, if I want to just play in co-op with a friend, even if you're gonna keep that weird convoluted system, at least let me turn off invasions so that I can just play in co-op with a friend and not have to worry about some guy invading the game and killing me for basically no reason because I can go back and pick up my things anyway. Like, all he's done is wasted my time. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, that's just frustrating. Like, so yeah. But Elden Ring is great. It sounds like the DLC is great as well, so I look forward to playing that in the future. But you have, Jeff, of course, played a few more games that will feed directly
Yeah.
into our topic today.
So I'll tackle them in order here. So I've been playing Zoneless Zen Zero. This is the next game by the Hoyo, um, the developers behind Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail. This is like their kind of like real-time combat brawler that takes place in kind of like city environments and stuff. So it still has that thing where you can summon, and like I was checking out the characters and I'm like, oh, I really want this character. This would be fantastic. She looks so cool. And then I went through all of the prerequisites to getting a bunch of summon things, and then ended up having enough to summon to do the 10 polls. And I got an S rank version of that character, so I'm going to be trying them out today. So I'm super pumped there. But this is basically a game where you kind of work with like essentially there's a zone that within the city essentially that is this um, kind of bad area that exists in this self-contained type of thing where when you're in there you don't know how to navigate it, you don't know how to explore, you don't know how to get out, and if you're there for too long you turn into monsters. And so essentially what it is you work with like a proxy who's on the outside who can navigate you around that area and take you in and out, and you kind of do these missions and stuff where things have gone missing and it's gone into this area and stuff like that. And you create or you choose from one of two characters at the beginning, and it's like a brother and sister group that kind of work at this video store that are top secret. They're also this like these hackers, and then you essentially have your like soldiers that kind of like go into that area, and that's where your gotcha elements are. So there's male and female characters that have that gotcha element. Visually, this game is beautiful. If I had to compare it to anything, I would say like this is kind of like Hi-Fi Rush in that kind of visual like identity of like being very flashy, being very colorful. Like it doesn't have like the cell shaded look or anything like that in the same ways. But if you are familiar with Honkai Star Rail and Genshin Impact, visually it kind of follows that same line. I don't think it's as polished as Genshin Impact in regards to some of it, but its combat is very fun. You basically have your attack button. You can basically swap out to another character in mid attack and start pulling off combos. When you kill enemies, it brings up a character switch menu, and then you pick a character, and then that character then follows up the combo to the next enemy. And as long as you keep killing enemies, you'll keep reverting back that combo, and it's really fun. It's really gorgeous. I think the voice acting and the music and everything's great. You can explore the city that's around you as well too, and it has kind of like a Persona vibe. Um,
Just
but it
just
is,
to interrupt you for a second, Jeff.
yeah.
There's a little bit of interference on your mic, so you might want to reset your headset there for a second. Um, but yeah, the game sounds really cool. I've never actually played one of these studios games, but I know that they are highly popular. So, is this one that you think is going to be another big hit for them? I can't actually hear you right now. You are muted apparently. Um, but hopefully we can sort out the audio here. Sorry for the small audio issue,
All right,
but
can you hear me now?
Jeff is back. Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, perfect. Okay, that's good. And my Xbox off because I reset my headset.
So
Okay.
yeah, did
Yeah,
you? I was saying, do you think that this is going to be another big hit for this studio?
yeah. I mean, Genshin Impact was extremely successful. Honkai Star Rail was extremely successful, and I think Zoneless End Zero will be pretty much just as successful. I think it's got really like the combat is super flashy. It's super nice. Like again, like to me, it reminds me a lot of Fi Rush in regards to just like how like the kinetic energy that's around that. Like you'll get into like fights, and then you kill the enemy, and that just kind of freezes everything, goes wipe out, and it's really nice. Like you have these like so your characters basically you can level up and you use like items that you find or buy or whatever to then level up those characters, and then you'll eventually break through a ceiling for their leveling and then go higher and higher and higher as you kind of progress. You also then equip these like little orbs to your characters, and then basically level those up as well. And then there's other elements that you eventually get that allow you to then further customize those characters. So the loop is constant as you're kind of progressing. Pretty much everything is voiced, so the production values for this game are insane. The animations and the visuals of this game are really good. When you start a mission, like a main mission, you navigate this like game board, and basically what happens is you have a start point and an exit point, and then you'll move around this board, and then you'll get into battles, you'll collect resources, you'll have this, and that'll unlock something else and another path, and then you'll have to get these things where you push like safes onto a switch that then activate that, and then you move on. So that's how you kind of progress. You're not progressing in this big open world area. The fight zones that you're getting into are fairly contained. So there's certainly some shortcuts to kind of like make the game affordable for them to like make.
Okay, yeah,
So
that makes
it's not
sense.
it's not like Genshin Impact where you got this massive area to explore, because that's expensive. So Zoneless Zen Zero, it feels like a conscious effort for them to create a game for a very smaller budget compared to Genshin Impact. And I only played Honkai Star Rail for a few hours, so I don't know how expansive it gets once you get off the ship, or if you ever get off the ship. I have no idea. But that's one game I eventually do want to go back to. But so far, Zoneless Den Zero is very fun. It's very flashy. It's doing everything that I want it to do right now. And again, I just unlocked the character that I wanted, an S rank version, so I'm eager to try them out.
Nice.
Um, but no, it's very very good so far, and it's the type of game that you can play for a very long time and not spend any money.
Okay, that's
Um,
good. That's good to hear.
yeah, because like there's this the type of currency said, oh, you can use this to unlock it. It was like $1.29, so I bought it. And it turns out it wasn't the currency that I actually needed.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah, so it was just some terminology and stuff like that that I didn't quite understand. But no, it's one of those things where it's like I might end up getting the season pass. I got to see kind of, or the battle pass. I got to kind of see whether or not it's something that entices me to play further. If the rewards off that battle pass are good. I have
Yes.
no idea. I gotta check that stuff. But again, like you can play this game without spending any money and have an absolute riot. Um, it's just one of those things where it's like if you want more from it, you may end up looking at some of those things. But again, it's free to play, so there's no initial cost to get into it or anything like that. And Hoyo has been very successful doing that. Genshin Impact, one of the like highest like income or revenue earning games of recent
Yes.
memory. So,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I believe
but
you've played another free-to-play game as well, right? That came out fairly recently.
yeah, and the moment that this podcast is over, I'm going to be spending the entire fucking day playing it because the First Descendant is very fun. So the First Descendant is a third-person game that's very akin to something like Warframe meets Destiny, that kind of stuff. So basically, as you play as a First Descendant, who is essentially kind of like a specially gifted kind of human, essentially to battle evil forces and all that kind of stuff. And essentially, what it is that you're trying to collect these essentially MacGuffins. I think there's three or four of them. And in the first mission, the bad guy gets one of them, and then you start to see like the threat that they impose. And you kind of go back to your home base, and you're like, okay, we need to figure a way of getting this um, to getting these items and stuff like that. And sorry, my cat is using the cat wheel, and I'm so proud, Sugar, right now.
That's why we
Um,
haven't seen Sugar on this episode.
she's been sleeping on it, but she was doing a little run and stuff, and it's a big fucking wheel. Like it looks like a turbine, like it could be powering my two TVs here. Who knows? But no, like you basically you return back to your base to kind of lick your wounds and to kind of like figure like, okay, we need to figure out where the next one is before they find it is. And you basically, in the last mission, by being in contact with the thing before you lose it, you end up getting this like ghostly companion called the guide who essentially says, hey, I'm here to help you. Even though parts of your faction essentially are like, we don't believe that this is actual help. There's some people that can't even see it. Um, and you kind of go through these missions to essentially track down this next item to get it instead of the bad guy force. And it's got these like very kind of bite-sized, almost throwaway missions where it's like you'll do a mission and it'll say like approximate time to complete mission 5 minutes.
Oh wow,
So
okay.
like they're very these bite-sized types of things, and like loot just appears everywhere. There's like all sorts of guns. There's all sorts of like things that you can equip. There are um, each one of your gun can and your character as well can have things attached to them. So like your guns can have like faster reload or faster or like less recoil or things like that.
Okay,
And
that's good.
visually, it's gorgeous. It's Unreal Engine 5. So it looks extremely pretty.
I mean,
The
I
characters look
don't
great.
think I've seen a bad Unreal Engine 5 looking game yet. Like they all
Yeah,
look great,
like
right?
oh, this game looks incredible. It runs really, really good.
Good.
Um,
I did hear there were
it,
some server issues though.
yeah, they've given some like currencies and things and stuff like that for it as well, but seems to be up and running right now. I mean, these the growing pains you get with
Any of these kinds of games,
this
right?
these types of games. But no, like it plays extremely well. Like the third person shooting is really really solid. You also have the grappling hook, so you can Spider-Man all around everywhere. But what's neat is you can see characters running around in the world even outside of missions. You can see them running towards a mission. You're like, well, I'm gonna book it, and then you run towards the mission. You start it, and then they're in your party, and you kind of go through that. There's raids that you can do as well too. They're about 20 minutes to about half an hour or so. There's these types of bosses, and that's where you get a lot of the materials to craft the other characters. Because like, if I want the ultimate version of Viesa, it's like $140 Canadian of like currency to get it, but you can just go through the game and get to the particular missions you need to and then earn those pieces. And sometimes you'll need to do a mission like 10 or 15 times to get that item because the drop rate's probably not good. But all of the descendants that you can get, you can basically earn in the game. It's the cosmetic stuff that I don't believe you can earn in the game. I think it's just through the paid stuff. There is a battle pass that's about $15 or so. Game Canadian again, it's probably $10 American. But no, it is incredibly fun. Like the shooting just feels cool. Like Viesa, the character I'm using right now, I think that's her name. She has like frost powers, so she can like skate around and leave frozen trails and stuff. And then if the enemies touch them, they freeze.
So
She has like
she's
a
Iceman.
blast, pretty much. I mean, Killer Frost. I mean, if you're going with the female analogy.
True, true.
Um, but no, like honestly, like this game is super fun. Again, it's not doing anything unique. Like
Mhm.
that's the thing with these types of live service games
They
is they
all have
basically just
something that's similar, right? They're not
yeah,
completely
they all
unique.
yeah. And I mean like again, like this game just feels really good to play. Like
Mhm.
I love the shooting, I love the abilities and stuff, and like the abilities are very like they're varied.
Yeah.
Like none of the characters feel like they're just the same character reskinned, and I like a lot of the designs look fantastic. And it kind of has that like um almost like futuristic Final Fantasy kind of vibe to it in regards to kind of what it feels like. The characters have that very kind of like Korean sensibilities of like we're going to create characters that are attractive.
Mhm.
Like these characters all look like they're just like models. So I mean, like the characters look really, really cool, and the outfits and stuff that you can get for them are intense. Like the amount of color changes that you can make on those outfits are really interesting as well too. All that stuff again is cosmetic. All that stuff is things that you buy. All the things that you basically unlock as you're playing. Um, but no, it's again, it's like Zoneless and Zero. It's doing all of the things that I want that game to do,
Yeah.
and it's
So,
doing them extremely well.
so I have a question for you as we move into our main topic here. Is this game going to be among the best live service games, or is it going to end up being one of the worst? What do you
Um,
think?
it's definitely not going to be one of the worst. I think it has way too much going for it. But I mean, again, like best or worst, like there's got to be like a middle ground, and I mean, it's definitely going to live in that space.
And we
I don't
definitely
think
we definitely
you,
have a middle ground on our list, which we'll get to in a minute. But
yeah,
it's
I don't
not
think it's
one
going to
I've
sit
tried, but it
among the
sounds
best.
good. So I'm looking
Yeah,
forward to
I
trying it.
yeah, I don't think it's going to sit in the best. I think that you know those types of like lightning in a bottle kind of like it's tough for games to kind of have that impact and stuff like that, especially again when you're not doing anything terribly new. Like Genshin Impact hit off really well because no one had really replicated Breath of the Wild in that respect. And I think like visually and from a gameplay perspective, I think it's tremendously better than Breath of the Wild. But because like again, like you've got that game running on hardware that can actually like
Run it, yeah.
fulfill those that 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 visual look to it. It's like Genshin Impact is just incredibly fun.
I mean, it's one of the
But
best, right? We've got it on our list here as one of the best, and I think that's how
yeah,
we'll do this list. We're not gonna; they're not kind of ordered specifically,
no,
but we'll each kind of pick different ones to speak about. Obviously, Genshin Impact, I haven't played. I know you have, and you very much enjoy it. For me, I'm gonna start with one we both played, but one that I personally consider probably the best live service game of recent years, and that is Division 2. I I really loved this game. I've mentioned it before on the podcast. I'm at about 300 hours played now. If Jeff said to me he wanted to go and play it right now, we would stop recording and go and play it right now. Um it's great, and
yeah,
they continue. You can tell it's successful as well because every time they talk about, oh, we're maybe going to end support soon, the community goes, no, we want to keep playing, we want more,
yeah,
and then they bring more. They don't just go, well, we're giving up. They actually continue to support the game. They did the one big expansion, Warlords of New York. There's been an update recently that some of the things that were initially locked behind that expansion DLC are going to be coming to the main game. So there's going to be like, you don't have to own the DLC to get certain changes to the game anymore. There's going to be overhauls as well. So they're still supporting the game even now. And this is something that me and you played probably for about 100 hours together, Jeff, something like that. We played quite a lot of it
I want to say
together.
that we met on Division Two.
I think we did.
You
Yeah,
know,
I think we did.
I mean, like yeah, like Division Two is like interesting because like, yeah, we played like probably like 100 hours of that game, and we played probably 60 to 70 hours alone with just Gary Whitta.
Yeah, we
Um,
did.
so I mean, like yeah, the Division Two was fantastic because like you and me, you know, Becky and Jonathan, we used to play the
Yeah.
shit out of that game, and I
And
think
I
yeah, I
can't
think it
remember,
definitely
Jeff.
is.
Did you play the DLC as well? I can't remember.
No, I stopped playing. I think when that first raid hit.
Oh,
I
okay.
think yeah, I haven't played anything since. I should reach out to our contact and see if I can get a all access kind of division pass because like, when that next thing comes out,
Mhm.
I definitely kind of want to jump back in and kind of revisit that stuff because like
Because we should,
division,
because
it
also
was
the other part of the content I didn't mention just now, but they added like this tower mode where you basically are playing the Raid, the movie. If anyone's seen the
okay.
Raid, it's basically you go
Is it a
into
whole
this
new
tower.
area or do you just go into like the same environments and then load up a next one?
So you're basically in. So it's not a whole new area. You basically go to a building, and then you're
Yeah.
working your way up the floors. but each floor is completely random, and every time you play it, it will be random. So
But is it self-contained in a building, or does it have like outdoor
no,
areas and
no.
then
So
you
it's
do that and move to the next?
self-contained in a
Okay.
building, but each floor will
Okay.
have slightly different layouts or different styles of room, that
Mhm.
kind of thing. Some floors won't have very much cover. Other floors will have a lot of cover, and you are also facing all of the different factions in the game can turn up in this building, so you never
Okay.
quite know what you're gonna get. Um, and it's really cool. And you do get some really good rewards from it if you get high enough in the building.
Yeah. Yeah. Division 2 is definitely, I think, at the top of my list is probably like the best live service game because like it improved everything that the original did, and
Yeah,
it was incredibly fun to play.
yeah. And I
Um,
think the element of being one of the best live service games as well is that you don't necessarily have to be the best out of the box, because part of being a good live service game is having good support for a long period of time. And Division 2 is a game that, while it was actually really good when it first released, and I would imagine Jeff probably reviewed it on the site, um, I wasn't around at the time. But while it was really good on initial release, it has only improved as a game since then, because they've given you more tools, they've listened to people's feedback of how they want certain things to work. You know, you can build up like your gun library of, say you get a gun with a certain stat on it that's really high, you can keep that stat in your stat library by demolishing the gun and then add it to any gun that you want to use in the game. There's some really cool stuff they've done with the systems and how they've kind of listened to the feedback to make the game much better over time. And I think that is a big element of being one of the best live service games. Obviously, you do get games that are fantastic out of the gate as well, and one of those that I think we should talk about was a bit of a surprise for people, but it's one I enjoyed for at least 3 or 4 months there upon its release, and that is Apex Legends. I
yeah,
Yeah,
Apex Legends was a huge surprise, and I mean, like, I don't play it anymore, but I mean, back when I did play it, um, it was just it played extremely well. It
mm-hmm.
it felt great to play. One of the best kills that I've ever had in a battle royale game I've had in that game. Um, it was just really, really impressive. And like again, I never kept up with it or anything like that. So I have no idea the state of the game right now. I know the community's been kind of at odds with certain things, but
Yeah. I
yeah, no,
think
it's just extremely good.
I think that you'll always get that with live service games, because the nature of live service means that they have to change things because they want it to feel different, and they want to change the way you play it, because if you were playing it the same all the time, you would eventually get bored and not play it anymore, right? And it
Yeah,
means that sometimes these live service games make changes that the community doesn't like, but they kind of have to do that. They kind of have no choice, because they have to make a change, see how you respond to it, and then make another change based on that response. That's essentially how this stuff works. And of course, we couldn't talk about live service games without talking about perhaps the best ever, but it is a game that actually made a massive shift to become what it is today, and that is Fortnite. um,
yeah, like
because this was
Fortnite,
something
you
completely
know,
different originally, right?
yeah, like it was not what it was before, and then eventually it turned into just basically the Toy Store equivalent of like a battle royale shooter, and it's become synonymous with like incredibly successful intellectual properties.
Yes.
So like every single property you can think under the sun is pretty much there to a certain degree. Um, and it's like it is one of the most polished um, battle royale shooters I think I've ever played. Like it just feels like it feels expensive. and they keep reinventing the world and the mechanics and all that kind of stuff. And when they bring in characters like Spider-Man, they create all new mechanics so you can like web swing around the areas.
Mm-hmm.
It was also the first game to utilize Unreal Engine 5 because again, it's Epic, so it uses a lot of the tools that Unreal Engine 5 is kind of known for. And while graphically people don't look at Fortnite as being like a technical showpiece, it is a technical showpiece.
Yeah.
Um, and
Because
it's just fun.
it's the thing about Fortnite is it's doing things on a technical presentation level that people don't even know that it's doing. But if it wasn't there, they would notice a difference. And that's the thing, is like you said, it is a technical showpiece, and not every technical showpiece has to be something that is the most realistic looking game you've ever seen. Like, you don't have to be a
Yeah.
realistic looking game to be a technical showpiece.
They've handled the monetization extremely well.
Yes.
It doesn't feel like egregious or anything like that. Like you have your battle pass, you kind of work through that.
Yeah.
You can get the skins if you want, and I think that they are priced fine for what they do.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, Fortnite is definitely like incredibly successful.
I mean,
like,
it's one of the
same with
biggest games in the world for a reason, right? So you know, good on them for making that shift from the kind of tower defense game into this battle royale live service. There is obviously another massive game that has an online component originally that became so successful that you could actually get the online mode separately, and that is GTA Online. And I know that's had some ups and downs. It wasn't great when it first launched, for example, with no heists and that kind of thing. But over the years, they've just added so much content to that game that there's like games within the game, which is, you know, it's
yeah, you get like the role players and stuff like that kind of like, they kind of stick to their characters and all that kind of stuff. But I never liked GTA 5 to begin with, so jumping into its online, I just had no interest whatsoever. But yeah, it was incredibly successful. Even something like Call of Duty Warzone. It's like not something that I play, but it's something that I recognize as being like a widely
absolutely.
appreciated
And you know, we do have a few more to talk about here, but while we're talking about games that we haven't played that are worth a mention, I noted a few here. Final Fantasy 14 I haven't played, but obviously that is,
I played some.
a
I played some of it. Like I
fantastic.
understand.
From everything I've heard, that's a fantastic game that wasn't a fantastic game when it first came out.
Yeah, I mean when they brought out Realm Reborn and stuff, and then they brought out like all the expansions and stuff, which are free up
And
to
there
a
was
certain point and
and
stuff.
I believe that the most recent expansion only launched like a week ago or something. It's quite recent.
It was incredibly broken on Xbox.
Oh, that's a shame. That is a shame.
Yeah, the performance on that game is kind of but
and then I've got
yeah,
a few more to quickly mention here that I think are worth a mention. Obviously, recently this year, there's been Helldivers 2. And I know that that's fallen off a bit recently, but that happens with live service games. It's peaks and troughs, and when they have some more content to add to the game, that number will go back up again. And then one that I probably will never play, but I understand why people really like.
I tried.
Is League of Legends. It's just League of Legends is massive, but I will never play it personally.
Yeah. Like I love Arcane. It's probably the most like amazing thing that I've ever actually witnessed. Like it is just absolutely beautiful. And I tried playing League. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna play League. I'm gonna play as like Jinx. We're gonna have so much fun. And like I just didn't care for it.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things where it's like it feels very impenetrable. In regards to like because you'd have to have a crew that kind of can teach you kind of how to play, because it is one of those things where it's like, yeah, sure, you have the same map, you have your 3 lanes and all that kind of stuff, but there's a lot of nuance to that game that if you don't get right, you'll have a very, very bad time with it.
Absolutely.
But
there's a couple more that are in our best category that I want to mention before we move on to some other things. That is, the first one is Elder Scrolls Online, which obviously recently received another DLC expansion as well. I played a bit of it when it first released, and I did really like it. And then it was one of those where it's like it was such a massive game with so much content, and I didn't know enough people playing it at the time to kind of keep up with the game.
Yeah, it's one of those games that I would love to get back to because like I'm looking at like I got the big statue, and then the other big statue from the first ones. Like I went really ham on those stuff because like I loved it, and like even go back to like when you go back and play like the Morrowind content and stuff, and you're like, oh, I
Yeah.
remember this, I remember this,
Yeah.
because
There's
like
so many
they
things you can see that you're familiar with, right? It's great.
yeah, and yeah, it is one of like it's one of those games where it's like if I could devote my time to playing one game, I would probably jump into like that because like it is just I
Yeah,
had such a fun time playing it. But
yeah.
I'm so
And
far removed from it
to
now that
Bethesda and Xbox's credit, and I mean Bethesda have always done this anyway, but
yeah,
an e- every time they bring out an expansion for this game, if you haven't played it yet, you can actually buy a version of the game that has the new expansion and all the previous expansions. And they're not like closing off content, which is something I'm sure we'll get to later on.
oh yeah,
um,
that's
but
on my list.
but before we get to that, I do want to talk about some games that are potential hits in the future or ones that I think have really improved over time. Obviously, Jeff, you spoke about one of them that you've been playing, First Descendant. I haven't played it
Yeah, I
yet,
think
but
Zoneless and Zero it kind of works into that as well too.
um,
Um,
I haven't
yeah,
played either of those yet, but I'm interested to check them out based on what you said. I've
yeah, you should download
obviously
First Descendant. Like I'll totally play, like
nice.
100%.
Nice. I've obviously got X Defiant on here. That's recently just had its season 1 begin, and they've added Capture the Flag to the game, and they've added a new faction with new abilities and that kind of stuff. I do think there's a lot of potential for that game to be another Rainbow Six Siege, which is, again, one of the best live service games there is. I believe they're in like year 15 of support for that game or something now. So it's,
But it started when it started out, people hated Siege,
yeah, I know.
like hated it,
So it's
and yeah,
probably
they turned it around.
it's probably the biggest turnaround in live service games, because normally if a live service game is hated that much at launch, it doesn't survive very long. We see so many of them
Especially if you're
die.
Ubisoft and you release like Hyperscape and you're like, well, this sucked, pull the plug.
Yeah.
That's exactly what they did with Hyperscape. Like, I don't think that game lasted more
Mhm.
than 3 months.
So hopefully, we see a similar level of support for X Defiant, and I do think it has potential to be a hit within the live service space. Probably not like a Fortnite or whatever, but I can imagine it being the same level of success as an Apex Legends, for example. I can imagine it being that sort of thing. Now should we move on to some disappointing ones? Because one of these is interesting because there could be an argument that it's also one of the best ever in some ways. So should we talk about that one first?
Yeah, so I played a lot of Destiny 2 when it first came out. And I think, like, honestly, I think that the core foundation of what that game was at the time that I played was super fun. I enjoyed it. I didn't like the raids because I felt that that gatekeeped a lot of the story and the content to essentially only its best players because, like, those raids are just frustratingly difficult in a lot of ways. And to me, it just turned me off entirely of Destiny and I stopped playing it. And then trying to jump back into it recently, it is a hodgepodge of like, either it's incredibly hard to parse where you need to go or how you need to go about it or what content is available to you and what is part of whatever expansion. And then they removed content that people have paid for. And when I jump back in, it's like they show this cutscene of things that happened and like they're incredibly pivotal things that you should know about Destiny 2. And it's just a cutscene now. They just removed content for really no fucking reason. Like I don't I like you couldn't convince me that it's a good reason for them to remove content that people have paid for.
Hmm. And that's what I was alluding to when I was talking about the way that Bethesda handle Elder Scrolls Online, where they haven't removed any content as far as I'm aware. And
It's like, hey, we made this content. We want you to enjoy it.
yeah, so why
Like,
doesn't Destiny do the same thing? You know, it's let's be real. Destiny is the game, like the first one and Destiny 2 as well, to some extent, is the game that basically made live service games a thing. In many ways. And the fact that they're not doing it that well in terms of preserving the content that people own, that's not good.
If you are a new player jumping into Destiny 2, I'm so fucking sorry. Because it is so hard to parse any of it. There's so many fucking menus and so much like just dog shit. Like, I don't understand why you can't just go into a menu, select Destiny 2, and then Forsaken, Kingdom, or Forsaken, and then
choose whichever one you want, right?
and like you work through that, and you click it, and it shows all the things that you need to do and stuff, and just make it very, very simple to get into. And they've done the exact opposite. Like I bought it, I'm like, fuck this, and then refunded it.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that was only a few weeks ago.
Because thank God I play on Xbox, because if this was on PlayStation, you don't get that refund.
Yeah,
you'd like,
never
you installed it. Sorry, you fucked.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Xbox, I'm like, hey, I downloaded this. I'm like, I can't understand where I'm going. I hate this. I would personally love a refund, and I had a refund within 15 minutes.
That's amazing. That's a really, credit to Xbox. As much as their whole service died this week for a while, and so did many other places apparently, they their customer service is the best in gaming, I think, in my experience. And I've had to deal with quite a few of these different customer service places. But back to live service games, disappointing ones. I think this one's fairly quick. Suicide Squad kills the Justice League. Do we need to say anything about it other than it's
a bad game? Have you seen the artwork for Mrs. Freeze for their next season?
I haven't.
That is the worst fucking face I've ever seen drawn in the history of anything.
Oh wow, okay.
It is unbelievably bad. I'm going to send you the picture of it.
Nice. I'll have a look.
It is unbelievably bad.
I mean, I'd love to know if anyone's actually still playing the game.
All right, look at this face and tell me, out of a score of 1 to 10, what would you rate it? Just the people who are watching, Google.
Oh my god. That is like, I don't even...
Mrs. Freeze Suicide Squad.
I'll be honest, I don't know if we were rating this on our website's scale. I don't know if I could even give it a 1. It's like, honestly, when you said it was bad, I was like, oh yeah, okay, it's probably just not a very good design. But it actually looks bad. It's not just the design that's the problem. Like, it just looks bad. That is bad.
Unbelievably bad.
There's
like here for.
That's terrible. Honestly, go and look this up because it's hilarious. I'd be surprised if anyone thought this was a good design.
Yeah. I don't know if you can really see it. Yeah, it's too bright.
Too bright.
But yeah, just Google it. Unbelievably bad. Like, I'll never touch Suicide Squad to kill the Justice League again. I am 100% done with that game. Yes. It's one of those ones where, like, I really wish that I bought it physically so that I could just trade it in.
Yes.
But I have it digitally, so I own it forever. It's like a bad scar.
I
will say it's not.
I was gonna say
it's not as.
It was. From what I saw, because I didn't buy it, as you know, but I did sort of ask you while you were playing it. I was like, is it worth buying? And when you were first playing it, you were like, oh yeah, it's kind of fun. There's, and then as you played more, I just heard negativity.
It's so bad. Like, it's like, you kill off the Justice League in just really, really dumb ways. And I'm still convinced that they were clones. I'm still convinced that the final season will be Suicide Squad saved the Justice League, and that'll be the branding behind the final season. I'm pretty sure that that's what's going to happen there.
Hmm.
But honestly, like this is the type of game that performed so spectacularly bad that I am like Rocksteady is a support studio right now working on a Game of the Year edition of Hogwarts Legacy. That's what Rocksteady is doing right now. Once like the
That's
pillar
crazy.
of WB developers
Yeah.
is now working on Harry Potter.
And they've also lost half of their developers, probably because of this game, you know.
Yeah,
So
it's just one of those dumb games. And I'm like, it's not as bad as Marvel's Avengers, which is our next one,
mm.
but I think Marvel's Avengers is still another case study in regards to like how to
Marvel's
fuck up
Marvel's
a home
Avengers
run.
for me was an interesting one in the sense that it was a bad game, and I don't even know if it's even playable anymore because the servers aren't on. But it was a bad game, but I did enjoy the single player element of it. Do you know what I mean?
The single player was fine.
So it's like
Yeah, like you
the
were just
single player part they did well. The live service part was shouldn't have even existed.
it felt tacked on. The levels were too big for big sake. Like traversal was like good for certain characters and sucked for others, and you were just fighting basically like robots and like weird things and
Mhm.
stuff. You weren't fighting anything substantial, and the bosses that you did have were just not great.
Yeah.
It
And
was just
then
another game where like they screwed up what should have been a home run.
yeah. And then we'll get a bit quicker here because I do only have probably about 5 minutes left. But Overwatch 2, I don't know if you played it, Jeff, but I
I tried playing it, but I've never been a fan of Overwatch.
so
I just don't like
I
the
played it
sweaty
for like
nature of it.
3 matches, and I was like, yeah, I'm never gonna play this again. Like it's
I
not
even
good.
tried playing Valorant because I got in on the beta, and I'm like, I don't like it at all. I just don't care. I like the characters, like the characters look cool.
Yeah.
Maybe I just need to find a character that has the abilities. But like, I tried one match for Valorant, and it went on for like 20 matches. I'm like, when does this end? I'm like, oh fuck, the servers are back for First Descendant. Like, I don't want to quit. Fuck. Like
Oh,
it
that's
just kept
funny.
going.
That
But
that is funny. Now I'm gonna let you run through these very quickly because I don't think we need to talk about them too much. But we do have
yeah,
at the very bottom notable failures, and when we say failures, you'll understand when Jeff starts listing them.
yeah. I mean, there's also like Paragon and stuff to add on as well. Those types of ones that didn't last that long. Hyperscape again, we talked about it briefly. It was a game that basically I don't think it even lasted 3 months. Foam Stars is a game that kind of came out, and Square Enix was like, "Yeah, play Foam Stars," and no one's playing Foam Stars like at all. Like, I honestly, if there's more than 5 players playing Foam Stars right now, I would be incredibly surprised. I would love to see the Steam concurrent on that. Radical Heights, that was a game that came out to try to capitalize on the Fortnite craze, and it just fizzled out. I think it was Cliffy B, I think that did Radical Heights. And then Rocket Arena was another one that came out and just didn't do anything. It went on the EA Play and like Game Pass and all that kind of stuff, but I don't think it really did that well at all. I really missed that Harry Potter kind of one where it was like cell shaded and stuff, and it was a battle royale game, and you basically used magic abilities and stuff. It was fun as fuck, but no one was playing it.
I have no idea what
Um,
you're even talking about.
oh, it was so good. There was also Babylon's Fall.
Oh
That
god, that was like the biggest failure ever.
yeah, and that was was it Platinum that came out?
Mm.
Magic Arena
Oh,
Battle Royale. What is that one?
that was that
Trying to think what it
Babylon's
was
Fall. Oh
called.
my god, that
Yeah,
was.
Babylon's Fall just did not do.
Didn't that die
Um,
like in the first week or something?
yeah, it came out and just Spellbreak. Spellbreak is the one I'm thinking of. That
Okay.
game was super fun. But yeah, like yeah, Babylon's Fall just kind of came out and did like absolutely nothing. It failed on every level, and then it just got shut down. They refunded. They did a whole bunch of stuff, and it just didn't do anything. Anthem is the next one, and like I enjoyed Anthem. I really had a great time with it, and
I
I really
never
wish
got
that
to play it,
Anthem Next.
unfortunately.
Oh, like it was fun. Like the characters were neat. The story was cool.
It's weird, right? Because everything I saw
the
from it
stinger after the
actually
credits
looked.
interesting.
Everything I saw from it looked good, and I know that they
It was
were
so
gonna
fun to
do.
play.
I know they were gonna do like a big update at one point, and then it was like, oh, we're not doing that anymore. And I wish they would have, because
Yeah, I
that
think it
probably would
was
have drawn me in.
the Anthem Austin, I think, was doing the Anthem next, and I think that they looked at it, and what I heard is that a lot of the higher ups were like, yeah, this could actually do something, but the cost to actually implement and to actually rebound
Mhm.
may not capitalize, and they just shut it down.
That's a
And
shame.
Anthem
That is a shame
had,
because it looked like it had some cool elements to it, especially that movement and the flying around and
oh,
all that
playing
kind
it
of
was
stuff.
so fun. It's the best flying has ever been in a video game.
So the
Like,
question is then, and we'll make this the final question of the podcast: Is it the best failure of a live service game? And what I mean by that is it the one that actually deserved more?
I think it definitely deserved more because again, the pedigree of the studio, like this was made by the Edmonton studio, by Edmonton BioWare,
Yeah,
like the one that's like, 4 hours from me right now.
yeah.
Um, and like, because like again, like it was a studio that had a lot going for them. I mean, sure, Mass Effect Andromeda and stuff, but that was made by a different BioWare. But this was like the main outlet, and I think it just suffered from one having to use Frostbite,
Mm-hmm.
two having leadership at EA that was like, we want these particular pillars to be met, and BioWare's like, we're not good at those, you know.
Yeah.
And I
It,
think like
it
the story and
it
the
was
characters and
almost
stuff
like
were
a Redfall situation, right? Where it was like Bethesda higher ups and ZeniMax higher ups were like, we want you to make this kind of game with these kind of things, and
yeah.
it's almost like you should just let your
And yeah,
creators
like
do what
Redfall's
they are good
on
at.
that list as well too. But yeah, like I don't know, it's hard to say like the failures and stuff because I think honestly, like I think Babylon's Fall was probably one of the biggest failures
Mm-hmm.
because according to literally everyone who played, there was really nothing redeemable. Like Anthem had redeemable qualities to it, but like yeah, like and I mean like Paragon like failed. Lawbreakers I think was the next attempt that Cliffy B did after
And
Heights,
Lawbreakers
if I'm
actually
correct.
had a bit of a rebound recently. Like something happened, and loads of people were like, I don't know, it got back in the news, and people were talking about it.
Yeah,
And
same with like Paragon, because Paragon was like, "Hey, here's all of our assets," and someone's actually bringing Paragon back. They took all those assets and they're flipping it to be their own thing.
that's cool.
Um, so that's interesting. But I think like to put a bow on all of it,
Hmm.
a live services essentially they excel by having a loop that feels incredibly satisfying and that the studios support it properly.
Yeah,
Because I
absolutely.
think when
And
you have that
what
kind of support, it's critical.
what I would say as well is, as a player, and I know this is hard, but I do think that live service has shown us, and some of these successes that we even spoke about, right? Even GTA Online or Rainbow Six Siege, there has to be an element of patience as a player, because the thing with live service games is they are not going to be perfect out the gate, and they are going to change over time. So as long as the core of it is good and something you enjoy, I would say, try and have a little bit of patience when maybe they make an adjustment you don't like or whatever, because these devs that are making these kind of games do listen and they take the feedback. That's what these games are. It's why they're
Yeah,
called live service.
I think with some of these games though is they also have to have enough content during that initial batch because like when Halo Infinite came out and tried to be a
It
live
just
service
didn't have
game,
enough, yeah.
it didn't have the content. And like honestly, like I think honestly like something like Halo Infinite would have been avoided if they just said, "Hey, all the stuff that we had in Halo 5 Guardians or whatever, or
Mhm.
Halo whatever, all of that stuff carries forward to Halo Infinite. So you'll have
Yeah.
all of that customization right from the get-go and then build from that.
Yeah, I agree. There were
Because if
ways
they would
to
have had
avoid that
that,
one for sure.
yeah,
What I'd
like
say though,
honestly,
let's end this one on a positive note because we do have to end now, unfortunately. And I want to put a question to you this week, which we haven't done for a while, which is please let us know in the comments what is your favorite live service game. I'll give you mine right now. Mine is the Division 2. I don't know what Jeff's answer would be, but
I
Division
think it
2
would be
for me.
that. I think I had the most fun with that kind of stuff because like like I believe again that we met through Division
I believe
2
we did.
and
Yeah, I
then
believe we did.
met Jonathan through Strange Brigade, which was kind of like a co-op
Yeah.
kind of game and stuff like that.
Oh, that was a fun game,
But
actually. That was a fun game. Wow.
Strange Brigade.
What a blast from the past, even though it wasn't that long ago. It
Very
feels
good.
like ages ago. But yeah, let us know your best live service game. Obviously, please subscribe to our live service, this podcast. And we will see you next time. But for now, from me, it's a goodbye.